So
Now, is this a challenge that you guys are in the middle of doing?
yes, yes, it is. These are
Awesome.
earned top level leaders really putting in the work, showing up, daily action.
Ooh,
It's actually
it's
very
the
similar.
elite, the top level. We got
Yes,
top shelf leaders.
these are our top shelf. This is our cream of the crop. That's right. They're
Awesome.
incredible. I know we've got several that'll hop on or catch the recording, but I want to honor your time, Debbie. Thank you
Sure.
so much for agreeing to step on this side and support a sideline team in the way that you're going to tonight. Guys, I know what she's going to talk on, and I gave her full permission to go hard. It's like, bring it, Miss Debbie. We got to do this. We're leaning in. These are my folks that can take it. Debbie Boyd, you are incredible. Every time you speak, my team is like, woo, she was on fire. So you were a top request for them to hear from. So thank you so, so much. So without further ado, Debbie, I'm going to kick it over to you. I can't wait to take some notes and learn from you as
Absolutely.
well.
Okay, awesome. Well, if you notice, I'm in a hotel room. If you guys can believe this, we moved into our house some months ago. And then our floors, our wood floors needed work. So we literally had to call a moving company to come move us completely out of our home so they could redo the wood floors. So we've been living in a hotel and we'll be here until September 9th. So I'm coming to you from a hotel in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it's my honor to be here. I want you guys to know, I recalled that Tara had said it was a challenge group, and I don't, being on the stage is not, my favorite thing, but I love training. And I worked really hard on this training. I wanted to bring something very extraordinary to you guys. And I think it'll resonate. I was going over it with my husband a little bit earlier, and he was like, people are going to like this. So there you go. My hubby himself has his endorsement. So let's just dig right in. I plan on talking to you guys for about 30 minutes. I think that's about the amount of material that I prepared, and this training was especially meaningful for me because it spoke to me, which is kind of my favorite training, is when I'm training to something that is also happens to be what I need to hear or be reminded of. So before we dive in, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is that I'm going to be training on, and that is consistency. But I am not going to train on the theory of consistency. I think we already all know that consistency wins. And the real question is not, does consistency work, but will you remain consistent and will you follow through when life gets busy and motivation wanes? Because I think one of the biggest misunderstandings is just because you're at a particular rank or just because you're even getting a big paycheck, um, that doesn't mean that you don't struggle with motivation at times. So, a lot of times, what you have built fundamentally is going to carry you through when there are slumps and what we might call motivation. Okay. Willpower will not always be enough to carry you through. So, that's what I'm going to talk about. This training is going to be about the action of consistency and how to set yourself up to finish strong when most people are going to fizzle out. All right. We will build this around three particular pillars. Let's call them the conditioning drills, if you will. And it's these three pillars that I'm not only going to talk about how they are backed by behavioral science, but what practical applications and action items can we take to best set ourselves up for success that way. The three pillars are making time, protecting your floor, and broadcasting your wins. So I'm going to kind of speak to those three areas. It sounds like it's going to be common sense. I think you'll find that I'm going to dig a little deeper than that surface level common sense. Obviously, we have to make time to work our business because consistency does not happen by accident. I think every one of us has figured that much out by now. It happens when you give it a container, and time is that container within which consistency lives. Then there's protect your floor, because success isn't about hitting these heroic ceilings of all out massive action all the time. Sometimes success is about never breaking a minimum standard, is having that bottom non-negotiable list that you're going to get done every day, no matter come what may. And then lastly is broadcast your wins, because hidden progress dies. There is so much behavioral science that points to the fact that visible progress multiplies momentum. So we're going to touch on that. But here's the truth that I just kind of want to address, because I think that sometimes this business can be rather lonely, and we're left a lot of times with our own thoughts and in our own head. And, the rejection can feel, weighted pretty heavy on particular days. So I wanted to say to you that the struggle to follow through and stay consistent, whether it be in a challenge, whether it be in your business in general, whether it be anything business related, is not unique to you. It's not unique to your team. It's not unique to this industry. It is universal, and it is a tale as old as time. But there is some psychology behind it. And I did a lot of research and prep for this, and I think you're going to find it super interesting. And there is practical application that can help with staying consistent, right? Most people do not fizzle from a lack of talent or a lack of intelligence or a lack of resources. They fizzle for three predictable reasons: decision fatigue is one of them. Lack of visible wins is another one. And weak accountability systems is the third. So in short, people don't bail on their business. They don't bail on a challenge because they aren't capable. They bail because they don't structure their environment to make follow through their default. All right. So let's talk about, well, before I jump into the pillars, I wanted to talk about one thing that I think is particularly interesting. If you ever studied successful business leaders, well, let me talk about, I'll get into that later. Okay, pillar one, let's go into pillar one, make time, or your time discipline. The truth here is that most people fail or fizzle because every day they wake up needing to decide if they're going to work their business, and if they are, when that working their business is going to take place. Instead of already knowing exactly when they're going to work it according to their schedule for that day, they're left in this constant kind of negotiation. They're bargaining, they're debating in their head. And that starts to take a drain on mental energy and ultimately on willpower. If your brain sees when and if you work as a choice, then you are going to spend time and energy mentally debating it. And when you debate it, that's when you're going to invite in excuses. And when you invite in excuses, that's when they're going to eventually win. Maybe not at the beginning of a challenge, maybe not when you first enroll, because in those periods, the dopamine hits and the motivation might carry you through. But ultimately, when the motivation does start waning, the excuses are going to win. And that's just guaranteed. But when you pre-decide when you're going to work, the decision is already made. The clock becomes your trigger. There's not negotiation, there's not debate, there's not excuses. All that remains is the execution. And that is actually a mental relief. So, something that came up recently for me personally, and I didn't even realize that it had this decision fatigue word thing attached to it, but my trainer, my personal trainer, I showed up at training one day and I said to him, if you knew how much emotional work it took for me to get here today, I don't know what's going on, but it It was everything I could do. I don't want to be here. I'm just telling you I don't want to be here. And he said, okay, because he's a personal trainer, so he understands the psychological component. It can be as difficult as the physical, right? So he asked me, he said, okay, so let's talk about that. So what was it that actually was the deciding factor that got you here today? And I said, the only thing that kept me, because I had at least half a dozen excuses lined up. I didn't care if I was going to pay, the late cancellation fee or whatever. I was prepared to do that. But the only thing that made me get here today was that I told myself, if I will just get in my car and I will drive there and I will in 1 hour be finished and drive myself home and it's over and I don't have to think about it anymore. But if I don't do this, I will spend the rest of the day with these two mental negotiators going on in my head. Like, are you going to work out? You said you were going to work out even if you didn't go to the trainer. You said you were going to work out at home. You're not going to work out at home. It's getting a little bit later, an hour. Like the energy that requires of me was just the options were just getting in the car and driving and getting the workout over with was the mental relief over the other option. So that is what I thought about as I was preparing this training. The research that I've read about this time discipline pillar says that as far as this decision fatigue goes, your brain is like a phone battery. And every decision that you have to make throughout a day is draining it a little bit more. So by afternoon, many of us, and the number of questions that we've had to answer, that, how many times we've had to think about our answer, how many decisions we've had to make, from what everybody's going to eat to who's wearing what, and et cetera, et cetera. And maybe even your job, outside of this business is requiring so much decision making. So most people are completely depleted from decision fatigue by the time they even get to working their business. And so when we add a challenge on top of just working our business, that tends to contribute to more decision fatigue and doesn't necessarily move our business forward if we don't plan carefully. So pre-deciding when we're going to work our business the day before, according to what we anticipate the next day's scheduled to be, actually saves energy for the action and the execution. All right. Then the behavioral research shows that too often people leave their follow through to chance. They say, well, I'll just have to work it when I can. I'll just have to make time for it later. And then life wins. We know how that goes. The science backed solution to this is to create what they call the if then criteria. So basically, that means you're formulating a backup plan. If your morning blows up, you've got a backup plan of exactly when you'll work your business. You may have to compress time. It may not be as ideal as you originally planned, but you have a backup plan. You have a plan B. And those who form a backup plan are statistically nearly twice as likely to achieve their goals because one, they automate the action. Your brain triggers the if and then it knows the then. Okay. They bypass willpower. They're not counting on willpower. They understand willpower can be largely driven by emotions. And so they just bypass that whole thing. And thirdly, they reduce procrastination. They know if it doesn't work, where they're going next. And then thirdly, the behavior science and the time management pillar points to people's inability or weakness in predicting failure points. Most people overestimate their ability to find time and they underestimate how often life will disrupt them. That's what statistically is shown. Behavioral science calls this the planning fallacy, that people will consistently underestimate obstacles and overestimate their capacity. All right, so achievers, let's just call them achievers, those who tend to show consistency over long periods of time, flip this phenomenon. And instead of being surprised when mornings blow up or lunches get hijacked or evenings get crowded, they actually plan for it. They do that by anticipating failure points and they design these fallback systems to keep their momentum alive. Okay, so there's a little bit of the behavioral science behind that. Now, here is the practical application that you can put to this particular pillar. Number one, block your primary slot. Even if it's 15 to 30 minutes a day, if that is what you can devote and remain consistent, block that time and know when you're going to work it. 15 to 30 minutes a day will compound quickly and it will beat the inconsistency of when I get around to it. If possible, choose the same time and place every single day. A consistent slot and a consistent place will train your brain to expect the work, making it easier to start without this mental resistance or mental tension of having to make a decision. Put it on a calendar because statistics and research shows that people are much more likely to take a task seriously if it is scheduled on a calendar because somehow that's treated as a commitment and not an option. And then blocking time also saves mental energy. We kind of talked about that, but we're not wasting effort trying to decide when to do it. We're simply executing on when we've blocked it out. Achievers are intentional about scheduling time to work. Choose a time commitment that you can stick with every single day, period. And then anything more than that is bonus. Then, secondly, script your if-then backup plan. Life will explode. We know that. It is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And that is why you have to build backup plans in advance. Know where you're going. I was reading that a meta-analysis of 94 studies found that people who use the if-then scenario, basically people who have a backup plan. If I don't get to it in the morning, then I know I'm going to sit down at lunch. I'm not going to have as much time, but I am going to get this and this done. Those people were almost twice as likely to follow through than those with vague intentions. So your backups should be clear and simple. If morning fails, there's a lunch sprint. If lunch fails, there's an evening block. And if night falls apart, then I will send one message before I go to bed. I will not let the day go away because achievers build backup plans in advance and they won't let the day get away without their business having made top of mind at some point throughout the day. All right. Then thirdly, a practical application in this pillar is that tie your daily work to strong triggers. If you guys have never read James Clear, I think it is Atomic Habits book, it's a really good one. Time discipline, we know, doesn't happen just because you want to be consistent. It happens because you build systems that make showing up automatic as possible. And one of the strong systems that you can use is what James Clear calls habit stacking. So you anchor your business activity to a cue that already takes place throughout your day routinely. That way it ties it to something that you're not having to give a lot of mental energy to. So whether you tie it to something like while my hot water's brewing, while my hot water's boiling for my brew, I'll send a message. After I plug in my phone at night, I'll send one follow-up. After I finish dinner, I will sit down and decide what I'm posting tomorrow. Achievers do not rely on free time or motivation. They anchor their business activity to something that's immovable or less movable throughout their day so that showing up starts happening by default and it doesn't require that mental debate. The motivation trap in this pillar is what I like to call it, is when you start a new business or when you start a new challenge and the dopamine hits are there and the motivation feels easy, you're excited. And that's because of the novelty of this doing something new is working in your favor. But motivation is a spark. It is not a fuel source, and it will come and go regardless of your rank, regardless of your paycheck. So consistency reliant on motivation is destined for failure. And without this time pillar, discipline, or a fundamental, your consistency, your follow through, and your ability to finish strong has nowhere to live. Those with intentions to finish strong do not leave their time blocks to chance. All right. So that was driving hard the time discipline part of it, but it is one thing that can be the most difficult for all of us. And so I wanted to give it its fair share of time, if you will. Now, pillar 2 is protecting your floor. Right? Since we understand the importance of the time block, what we're now going to decide is what we're going to do in that time block, because what we're not going to do is wait till we sit down in that time block to decide what we're going to do, because we know what that ends up looking like. That ends up scrolling till the time block's over and us wondering why we didn't get anything done. All right. That's why you need a floor. The floor is the minimum standard that you refuse to break. Even on your busiest, most chaotic days, your floor still gets done. You may miss a ceiling, but you're not going to miss the floor. And here's some behavioral research facts associated with this floor concept. The floor is where habits are formed. Small minimum actions wire faster and last longer than sporadic, all-out, massive effort. Just like one push-up a day builds a workout habit more reliably than scattered workouts unplanned, they come up unplanned. One push-up a day builds a habit more than scattered workouts that came up out of nowhere. In business, one ad, one message, one post that touch daily at the floor level will compound into more momentum than a marathon day followed by an action. The floor keeps you future focused, and research shows that people stay motivated longer when they know what's still left to do rather than replaying what they've already accomplished. A written floor acts as a forward-facing checklist that blocks your drift before distraction can take over. The floor prevents burnout, and because it's always achievable, it guarantees progress without overwhelm. Protecting your floor trains you to recover quickly from setbacks and to keep momentum alive even on messy days. The floor also builds discipline, talent, motivation, ability. All of that will rise and fall, but your conditioning will hold steady. So the practical application tied to building this floor is number 1, write it down in advance. Written targets drive higher execution than vague intentions. This is why we love the to-do list. Sometimes I'll write something that wasn't even on my to-do list just so I can scratch it off. Okay, it's a very human phenomenon. A written floor removes ambiguity, and it tells your brain exactly what done looks like. Research shows that the unfinished plans occupy your mental space. Capturing tomorrow's floor before the day begins closes the loop and reduces the mental friction at start time. It's like that thing when you lay down in bed and you're like, oh man, I've got to remember to do that. I got to, and you end up just staying awake more so than if you just got out of bed and wrote it down so you could mentally release it. That is also part of what your floor is doing. Achievers appreciate the clarity that comes from a written floor. All right. Number two, keep it meaning minimum, but make it meaningful. Research shows that even small wins build confidence. When you finish something tiny every day, your brain learns, I can do this. And that makes it easier to repeat tomorrow. Little victories add up, not only to build momentum, but also to build your confidence. So an example of a floor might be one ad. Well, that's going to grow your pipeline. One message. Well, that's going to move a conversation. One post. Well, that's going to maintain visibility. So whatever your floor looks like, whatever the minimum non-negotiables are, you write them down ahead of time because that is what your to-do list looks like. That is what that is your non-negotiable, and anything else is a bonus. Number three, condition yourself, or number three in the practical application is to condition yourself to never miss it. Your goal isn't streaks of perfection at the ceiling. Your goal is streaks of consistency of the floor. Floors are your conditioning drills. They're repetitive, they're not glamorous, but they're essential and fundamental. So this is what I think about floors as a lot. You'll listen to coaches talk about how committed they are to conditioning their athletes. And many of them will talk about how hard their athletes work out. And no athlete loves the suicides and the wind sprints and the push-ups and empty gym. But what coaches know that is that when it comes to the last third of a game or it comes to the last quarter or whatever it is, that oftentimes it will not come down to talent or ability. It will come down to who was best conditioned. And that's what your floor does. Your floor conditions you. And the motivation trap, if we're not careful, is that most people don't lose momentum because they lack talent. But because they miss the floor. They confuse the ceiling with the standard. The ceiling is not sustainable on a daily basis. They hit a big ceiling once and then they skip the next 2 days thinking that they did enough work to last them for a while. That is not how you're going to build consistency. And the human behavior needs the floor. So find something that you can remain consistent with day after day after day. The floor is the safety net that makes consistency possible and launch pad for your growth. You don't rise to your ceilings, you rise from your floor. Floors create streaks of activity. Streaks of activity create momentum, and conditioned leaders will always outlast the pack. Okay. Pillar number three, broadcast your wins. The truth is that progress hidden is progress lost. Wins only grow when they're visible. So what you hide fades and what you broadcast multiplies. Finishers don't just do the work. Finishers track the work. Finishers share the work. And finishers let accountability multiply their momentum. Here's a little bit of research behind this broadcasting the wins concept. Visible small wins fuel motivation. When progress is seen, even your own progress seen with your own eyes, even tiny steps will create energy and make you want to keep going. Public progress multiplies your commitment because sharing what you've done strengthens your own drive because you're feeling accountable to others, right? And then visibility changes behavior. People stick with things longer when their actions are seen. That's why I was talking to you about my trainer at that particular gym. He has got whiteboards around every wall at the gym, and there's check-ins and there's tally marks and there's who completed this and who completed that. And that's because he understands the psychology, and we're not going to be human nature. Publicly broadcasting wins helps people coming back because the effort is visible. Shared wins sets the standard. Broadcasting progress shows what's possible, makes consistency feel normal, and encourages others to match it. So recognition drives momentum. Recognition is the number one currency in network marketing. Broadcasting wins fuel not only the momentum of yourself, but also for your team. So practically applying this, what does it look like? Track it visibly. Whether you've got to use a street calendar, whether you've got to use a wall board, whether you're using tally marks, whatever you've got to use so that your brain can see your daily dues being done. Behavioral science shows that your brain craves visible evidence of your progress. When you rely on memory, your wins will blur together and your momentum feels weaker. But when you can see your progress, whether it's the streak calendar, the tally mark, the visible chain of days completed, it creates what's called a powerful reinforcement loop. So achievers track progress, big and small. Number two, in practical application, is communicate it publicly. Guys, drop your floor done in your team chats, post it in accountability threads, find power partners, message your buddy. Visibility turns a private habit into a team standard. And these micro recognitions will amplify your commitment and normalize consistency across your entire group. Achievers turn accountability into an energy source instead of a burden. Okay. Number three, and practically applying your recognizing your wins, is celebrate consistency and not just production. Recognize those who show up daily, not only those with the biggest results. Build loops, whether buddy texts, streak leaderboards, team shout outs. Achievers don't just count on the dopamine spikes that come from big outcomes. They also rely on the small repeated rewards. They celebrate consistency. They train their brains to crave the daily actions that compound into long-term results. The motivation trap that people will get into about this broadcasting the wins thing is that most people don't quit because they stop working. They quit because their wins stay invisible. And the progress must be visible to feel real. When it's hidden, our brain tends to discount it and the motivation will fade. It's called progress blindness, according to research. So when progress isn't tracked or shared, the brain struggles to register that movement. The brain struggles to register that movement has been made, and the invisible effort will quickly feel like no effort. So think of game film. You know, when players are watching game film, they're not watching game film because to find out who won their game. Obviously, they already played the game. They know the score. They know who won. They know, a lot about the game, but they're reviewing film so they can study the fundamentals, the small wins, the corrections that need to come to their game come out of watching that film. And they broadcast that progress and discuss it among their whole team. The film captures the progress so that it can be reinforced, it can be repeated, it can be built upon, and it can create momentum. So I love that analogy, thinking about what the purpose is of them, watching and breaking down a game they've already played. So in closing with that, validate your own effort so you can see that it mattered, create accountability so that others can see not only your consistency, but their own, and raise the standard so that the team sees what's normal and people will rise to meet it. All right, so that was pillar 3. And in closing, before I close, I just want to touch on what's possibly one of the biggest behavioral pieces in this training. And it's called the guilt spiral of inconsistency. So behavioral science shows that inconsistency doesn't just stall momentum, it erodes what's called our identity. Here is why that happens. Cognitive dissonance says that when actions don't align with your stated goal, your brain experiences dissonance, which is like this mental tension. You miss a day and the brain already starts registering conflict. Look, I said I was serious about my business, but look, my actions aren't matching what I said. And that discomfort starts grinding and ultimately starts turning into guilt. Then there's the avoidance loop. So studies show that when guilt becomes associated with a particular thing like your business, then you will start to avoid the source of that guilt, not just the guilt itself. In business or in our businesses, that means avoiding the very work that builds the business because it starts being tied to shame. And that is why one day a missed work so easily turns to two, turns to three, turns to four, is that we just start getting in that cycle of the spiral of guilt, they call it. Then what starts happening is we get into these identity feedback loops. Every action that you make to your business is a vote for who you are in your business. When you follow through with your business, you are reinforcing that I am consistent, I am a professional, I take my business seriously. And when you miss repeatedly, the opposite identity starts taking root. Your brain starts getting this tension going that I'm someone who can't stick with it. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm flaky. I won't follow through. We start associating the identity with ourselves. So this shift in identity starts to erode your self-trust. And once self-trust is broken, then your confidence starts collapsing. So this guilt spiral is powerful because it doesn't just stop activity. It actually rewrites how we see ourselves. And once you stop seeing yourself as consistent, then you stop showing up. And so that is what these three pillars are supposed to be about tonight. They are supposed to interrupt this spiral that we let ourselves get into. They will give you structure. They set minimum standards that will protect your momentum, and they will establish visibility that multiplies your accountability. So instead of feeding guilt, they build identity and they reinforce that I am consistent, I am a professional, and I will follow through. Now, all of that might seem like common sense, but I hope what you've taken away from this is that there is actually behavioral research tied to all of this, as well as practical application. We're not going to beat human behavior. So be an achiever that recognizes that. Decision fatigue is real. Most people who start this business are already overwhelmed with the amount of daily decisions that they have to make. Set yourself up for success, finish your DMOs, finish your challenges, and finish strong. Because finishers are not always going to just be the ones with the most potential. They're going to be the ones most prepared and most realistic at understanding that not only are they going to battle the distractions, but a lot of times they're battling themselves. All right, guys. So that is what I brought. One thing I was going to just close with that I said I would get to. If you've ever studied some of the top, most successful leaders in business, it's fascinating to me that they recognize this whole decision fatigue phenomenon and all that. Like Steve Jobs, I think it is, wears the same gray turtleneck or wore the same gray turtleneck almost every single day, or a black turtleneck, I guess it was. I think Mark Zuckerberg wears the same gray t-shirt or alternates gray t-shirts every day. I follow another business leader. that I love. She's a woman, hyper successful. She wears black every single day. A lot of these leaders will eat the same thing for breakfast and the same thing for lunch. People I know will wear what they're wearing to their morning workout to bed and just sleep in it. All of those, if you dig into that and you find out why those people did those things, it is they have said that it is because they don't want the menial, trivial decisions that most people, that most people make every single day to take their mental energy. They want to save their mental energy for the things that move the needle. So these are the pillars that can help you do that. And I hope you'll take from that what you will, and that you'll go away from this not just saying, oh, well, that was interesting information, but you'll actually make application for your own business. All right, there
Oh
you
my
go.
gosh, I have like a page full of notes and I want to watch this again. Like I need to watch it again to process it because all I was thinking was like, okay, yes. Oh, okay, yes. Oh, oh, okay, yes. Like it all just made so much sense. And Debbie, I'm going to be an advocate. Like you need to teach this at Summit or something. Like this is so good and it's so great for leaders. And I'm just so thankful that you took the time and the energy.
Sure.
And let's talk about it. You took mental capacity out of your your day and your week and your business to prepare this. So I hope that you can turn around and hopefully use this for your business as well because it was excellent. I'm so, so
Oh, I definitely will use it. It was super
brilliant.
helpful to me to be reminded of, some just very fundamental, basic things that we start getting. You know how it goes. We get busy, we start
Yes,
slipping on, saving our mental acuity, and, chasing all the shiny thing instead of sticking with the fundamentals. So, yes, it was
it's
very helpful.
it's so true. It's so true. And I even thought of some things that I need to refresh in my own personal day to day, but then some thoughts that I had for the team. One of the thoughts that I had, and I might even bring it to Brittany and Laura and Adrian about the Fab Five that we're doing in September is coming up with a calendar. And if we don't do it corporately, do it team wide, where it's a calendar and every day you show the ticker of completing
Mhm.
your Fab Five for the day.
Yep.
So, yes, you have your daily checklist and you can submit that, but let's have a graph where it's like, yes, yes, yes. Um,
I did, and here's something fun. Maybe you guys can do on your team, or you can do with your teams or whatever. So after I finished putting this training together, I went and I made this graphic, and we're going to do it's called the Streak Challenge. And it's got a streaker, I mean, a little comic streaker with, and where it says censored is where but we're going to I'm going to start even with my team called the Streaker Challenge or the Streak Challenge, and play all on streaking.
I
Uh,
love that. That's hysterical too. Very comical, but I love that. It goes to
uh,
the theory. So,
mhm.
Debbie, I'm so, so
Sure.
grateful.
My
I really
pleasure.
hope you know that for your time and energy that built up to this, but also the time you took pouring into us. So, guys, is she not amazing? Thank you guys so, so much for hopping on. Thank you, Debbie. And if I can ever return the favor, you know where to find
You
me.
bet.
All right.
I know where
Bye.
you are. Bye,
Bye,
guys.
guys.
Thank you.